Welcome to this week's Movie Math, where it looks like most of the studios were on Santa's nice list. Yes, it seems that nobody found any coal in their box office stocking over the holiday season, which on the night before Christmas had seemed like a potential nightmare thanks to the Sony hacking scandal. Not only was the physical safety of moviegoers threatened, but coverage of the interview, would it play, where would it play, made it the only movie the media was talking about. But now the cyber dust has settled, and a new theory says the Sony hack was an inside job, spearheaded by a female employee who was fired from the tech division. Can she trade Sony the movie rights to her side of the story for a get-out-of-jail-free card? As for the movies currently in theaters, the final Hobbit flick saw its box office numbers grow like Marie's Christmas tree in the Nutcracker. Topping the box office for the third week in a row, The Hobbit now finds itself at number 8 domestically for 2014 and at number 5 worldwide. While it's truly benefiting from being the final chapter in, well, at least the Hobbit trilogy, Battle of the Five Armies has also got to be thankful there are no other male-friendly flicks in theaters right now, whereas last year Smaug had to compete with Anchorman 2, The Wolf of Wall Street, and American Hustle. Then Into the Woods and Unbroken continue to run neck and neck and are both nearing the century mark after just 2 weeks in theaters. Into the Woods is slightly underperforming when it comes to Disney live-action fairy tales, yet as I noted in my review, it has to contend with mainstream audiences being unfamiliar with the source material, Stephen Sondheim and James Lapine's musical. In contrast, Unbroken is overperforming, and Hollywood continues to scratch their heads, still not realizing, as I did when I reviewed the film, that it's the religious overtones to Zamperini's story which is garnering audience interest, not Angelina Jolie's turn as director. Hollywood might never catch on that Unbroken owes its success to moviegoers' interest in faith-based stories, just as Jolie seems to have been unaware of that connection, or at least the strength of it, when actually making the movie. Night at the Museum 3 is also closing in on the century mark in its third frame, showing impressive staying power after faltering out of the gate. It's about to cross the century mark overseas as well, yet it still has a ways to go before it can earn back its $127 million budget. Don't forget, budgets don't include advertising costs, and studios only get back about half of a film's box office haul. I know some of you like to argue that last point with me, but 50% returns continues to be the industry standard on how box office numbers are evaluated. And the Sony hack, which revealed detailed earnings reports on the studio's films, hasn't been able to report otherwise. As for Sony, they also made out okay at the box office. Annie isn't a hit, but at least it isn't a financial embarrassment, as some people are saying it is creatively. And while the interview has made just about $5 million in 2 weeks at theaters, online it made $15 million in just its first few days. Pretty good for a movie that got horrible reviews. Plus, interestingly, its biggest threat wasn't hackers, but pirates. Clearly, if the studios can find a way to keep their movies from being pirated, digital day-and-date releases could become a viable distribution option. Netflix is surely taking notes. Then while the holiday movie season turned out not to be a horrific nightmare, 2015 kicked off with one, as The Woman in Black 2 hit theaters. Debuting in 4th place, it opened pretty close to the first flick, which boasted a post-Harry Potter Daniel Radcliffe. In the past, the desolate winter movie-going season has been prime territory for horror movies. But as the genre becomes more successful with mainstream audiences, it's beginning to compete in more crowded arenas. The next Paranormal Activity movie, The Ghost Dimension, hits theaters in March, while Insidious Chapter 3 and the Poltergeist remake are summer movies. Then, when it comes to the Oscars, Harvey's The Little Engine That Could seems to be working its way up that hill. Virtually shut out of the early awards lists, The Imitation Game not only racked up a number of Golden Globe nominations, but audience interest. Going wide on Christmas Day, the Codebreaker flick is now at $30 million, higher than current box office competitors Birdman and The Theory of Everything. But while American Sniper is also posting impressive numbers in its still limited release, its 160,000 per theater average is holding in week 2, the Oscars are its last hope for any nominations. Elsewhere in the box office, The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1 could indeed surpass Guardians of the Galaxy by next weekend as the highest-grossing movie of the year stateside, a repeat of last year when it surpassed Marvel's Iron Man 3, although in the $400 million bracket. As you can see, the numbers are much smaller this year, as they were all around. 2014 saw a 5% drop from 2013, the worst year-to-year decline in 9 years. That's because everything underperformed, with just one movie joining the $1 billion club. But maybe The Hobbit will make it too? Last year we also had 2, and the year before that, 4. Some people say television is to blame, but I think precise language is needed. Quality television is to blame. On the small screen, writers are king, while sadly on the silver screen, they're still the court jester. Until that changes, things at the box office are unlikely to change as well. But don't count 2015 out just yet, as while the jury is still out on quality, the studios might just win the day on quantity alone. As for this coming weekend, though, Taken 3 is already expected to debut lower than Taken 2. However, Selma goes wide as we wait for the Oscar nominations to be announced January 15th. And that's the weekend box office. I'm Grace Randolph, and we just did some movie math. As always, thanks for watching, and I hope we go beyond the trailer for these other top movies.